1051.
It's Power 1051, home of the Breakfast Club. Angie Martinez, Not Hip Hop and R&B. It's your main man, EmEz. It's the Sunday Sit Down. And across from me this afternoon is Ruben Diaz Jr., the youngest person to ever be elected assembly since Theodore Roosevelt. Wow. That's kind of crazy.
That's what they say. You know, I've been blessed with a long political career. I got introduced in politics at the tender age of 7, working campaigns.
Now, let me stop you.
Right.
Is that only because your father was in politics, or is that something that was already burning inside of you?
Well, it's funny you asked that question. Well, my father and my mom,
And mom.
Oh,
okay.
She wasn't elected, but they always taught my brother, my sister, and I to give back to the community. And my father used to run for office. He never won. But one way, shape, or form, we were always involved in somebody's campaign. Mm-hmm. So fast forward a little bit, back in 1994, I ran for a political position called district leader at the tender age of 21. So I beat a gentleman who was there for 23 years. So he was there before I was born.
Wow.
And then I ran for the New York State Assembly at the age of 22, lost that race. At the age of 23, I won. And it's funny because my father's elected now, but we're the only family, I think, in the history of the United States where the offspring or the child got elected before the parent.
Wow.
In other words, every time you hear about political families, it's always that the parent got elected before their son or daughter. I was elected 5 years before my dad.
And Pops can't even get that residual because he's already had his time. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's been a blessing and it's been quite the ride.
So I'm assuming you're a Bronx native.
All my life. Soundview. Big up Soundview.
See now we got to talk hip hop. You talk about Soundview.
That's right.
Now, growing up in the Bronx, as they say, the mecca of hip hop, this birthplace. As they say. Give me your top 5 MCs growing up.
Oh, my top 5.
Your top 5 growing up.
I'm gonna just say ever.
Go ahead. You can go ever.
Because I'm still a hip hop fan.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's Eminem.
Okay.
Big Pun.
All right.
Rakim, KRS-One, and Biggie.
Wow.
That's a strong 5.
This man knows his music.
That's a strong 5.
Absolutely. Ruben Diaz Jr., Bronx Borough president in the building. It's a Sunday Sit Down. Not too long ago, I had Darlene Rodriguez of NBC, and we talked about Puerto Rico and its the possibility of Puerto Rico becoming the 51st state in the United States.
Ooh, that's a hot topic.
Give me how your feelings on it.
I think, that when you look at Puerto Rico and the state that it's in now, I think people need to put their politics aside, if you want me to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
Back in 1898, let's get a little bit of history here. Maybe it was a good idea for Puerto Rico to become an independent nation, the way that Cuba was or became. I think that was a good idea. Fast forward, 1952, when it became a Commonwealth. Maybe that was a good idea. But when we're speaking about the future status of Puerto Rico, I think that the only way for it to survive economically and with political influence and political power is by becoming a 51st state. A lot of people here who are Puerto Rican have problems with it becoming the 51st state. But even more so than that, I think the biggest challenge is for all of us to get the United States to understand that Puerto Rico needs help. Puerto Rico is in debt right now. Their debt is over $73 billion. And it's time for the federal government to step in, not to have a buyout, but to allow them to file for Chapter 9. They've been defaulting on their payments. And it's really a complicated situation there, but to make a long story short, if we don't come in now, they're going to tank. People are already leaving. Doctors are leaving. The professional class is leaving. And our brothers and sisters and family members who are over there aren't getting services that they need.
From one situation to another. Legionnaires. What's going on? I heard it's really prevalent in the Bronx right now.
Well, not right now, not anymore. Thank God. Look, Legionella, the bacteria is all around us. Your listeners should know that on a daily basis, we all breathing in the Legionella bacteria, the same way that there's bacteria on our cell phone and the doorknobs and the bathroom, so on and so forth. But when it incubates in something called a cooling tower, and the cooling towers are in a number of buildings throughout the city of New York, what happens is that it gets airborne, and that's when you have a large portion of the population that really is affected by it.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. How does someone get affected by Legionnaire?
You breathe it in, but the overwhelming majority of people who breathe it in don't get sick by Legionella or Legionnaires. It's a form of pneumonia. and so it lodges in your lungs. Now, those that get sick by it are the elderly, those who are smokers, people who have some type of pulmonary condition, asthma, bronchitis, if you have cancer or AIDS. Those are the people who really get sickened by the Legionnaire's disease, and the symptoms are like flu-like symptoms. So if you have like aching muscles or body parts, if you have the chills, if you have nausea, diarrhea, get to the hospital. So what happened to us in the Bronx is something that we've never seen before in the history of the city. We had we had exactly 127 people who were sickened by this in the month, from between the month of July and the first week of August, and we lost 12 Bronxites. 12 people died, and it was a dire situation, a health crisis, and we had to make sure that the city, who I thought was taken by surprise, the city was not equipped with making sure that we stop this and prevent this, or to clean it up. I called in Governor Cuomo and the federal government, and thank God that now all of the towers have been identified, they've been cleaned up. We haven't had one sick person from this outbreak since August 3rd. The bacteria only lives between 7 and 10 days, so we already in the middle of August. That means that outbreak is done and hopefully is behind us.
Learning a lot, Legionnaires. And so now, what are the preventive measures being taken so these type of things don't happen anymore?
Well, we introduced legislation because we know that, look, on a normal basis, on normal circumstances, the city of New York sees anywhere between 200 and 300 cases of Legionnaire's disease, people who have been sick. But it happens 1 or 2 people here, 1 person there. This one, there was over 120, like I said.
Yeah, it's kind of big.
So in order for us to spread these outbreaks, what they call these community outbreaks, we need to target the cooling towers. And the city didn't even know how many cooling towers there were in the city. They never had a system of not only having them registered, but having them inspected, tested, and cleaned up whenever they tested positive. Now we have legislation. It was signed it was passed by the city council, legislation that I helped introduce, and with Vanessa Gibson, the city councilwoman, and the mayor signed it into law. And hopefully now, next year or for the months to come, all of these folks who have these cooling towers will be inspected. The landlords have to clean them up, and hopefully we'll avoid this outbreak in the future.
Wow, that's a lot right there.
Yeah.
Ruben Diaz Jr., Bronx Borough President. Now, there was a survey that was put out, and they said the Bronx was New York's most unhealthiest county. Can we fight that? What's going on?
Yes, we can, and we are trying to. Look, I could brag about a lot of things that have been going on in the Bronx. We're not the Bronx of the 70s, 80s, and 90s anymore. We're the new Bronx. Since I've been the borough president, we've created over 17,000 jobs. We cut unemployment by almost half. We've created over 16,000 units of housing. We've restored our public parks. I remember when I used to play in the park. We didn't even have parks, right? I used to jump on. My bouncing gym was dirty mattresses. But our parks, we put in about $350 million in the restoration of our public parks. Life isn't perfect. We're the safest Bronx that the world has seen. Like, we're leading the city in crime reduction. The one area I cannot brag about is health, and that's for a number of reasons. We know that social economics play a certain role on health. You give somebody a job with health benefits, they're going to become healthier. Their family's going to be healthier. But we also got to educate the public. So we have a number of initiatives like the CAN initiative, Changing Attitudes Now, where people just have to start changing. You and I know, coming from especially minority families, right? When you go to your grandma's house or your mom's house, if you finish a dish too quick, what do? They put more on it, right?
Yes,
and they think that they're showing us love by doing that. So what we have to educate folks is, look, don't do that to your kids, because that promotes child obesity. Parents, mothers in particular, and grandmas don't want to hear that. But the amount of seasoning, the amount of sugar, the types of foods you drink.
I just had a son. Me and my girl just had a son, and it's hard because you don't want them to cry, especially when it comes to food. Right after I give him his bottle, he wants to cry when it's over, and you want to put another one in his mouth, but it's like, you gotta curve that sometimes.
And then like even when they do yams, they put sugar in there. That when they salads, sugar on everything. The sugary drinks. We tell people, stop drinking as much soda. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, we are trying to recondition the way that families, the way that individuals approach being healthy. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a bodybuilder from one day to the next. It just means little simple tips like maybe eating a fruit before you eat dinner so that you don't have to eat as much in terms of dinner. Things like a tuna fish sandwich, right? So my wife and I, we've taken to, instead of using mayonnaise, use plain yogurt. And it tastes the same, but again, mayonnaise has so much fats in it, and